I'm going to show you how the iPhone 6 compares to the HTC One, including the original and the new HTC One M8 that's in stores now. If you're looking to upgrade, you may own an original HTC One that you purchased because of the nice aluminum metal design, and you're ready for something new and you're not sure if you want to stick with Android, you may be tempted by the iPhone 6. If you're looking for a new device, you're maybe comparing, do I go out and buy an HTC One M8 now, or do I wait for the iPhone 6? And hopefully this video will help you figure out what you want to do. Now, from a design standpoint, all three phones should use aluminum. And you'll notice that there are brakes in the back. We have white brakes on this silver iPhone 6 mock-up. We have white brakes on this HTC One. And we have black brakes over on this gunmetal HTC One M8. The brakes on this mock-up are a little crude, and rumors suggest that they will slim down and not be as obvious in the final design. The HTC One M8 features these marks that stay there, but overall this is not a ugly design by any means. These marks simply add to the character of this phone. Now, other changes that you'll see are in the edges of these devices. We've gone from a chamfered edge to slightly more rounded corners and edges on these devices, and that's one way that we're seeing some changes across these different devices. One other major difference between the iPhone 6 and either of these HTC One models is front-facing speakers. We see front-facing speakers on the M7 and on the new HTC One M8, and those traditionally beat the speakers on the iPhone 5S, and we assume will beat the speaker that's on the bottom of the iPhone 6, basically just because it's pointing the sound directly at you through stereo speakers instead of just down from a single speaker. You'll also notice that the backs of both of the HTC One models are curved so that they fit in your hand a little bit. The edges of the iPhone 6 are curved, but the back is completely flat, so that's another design difference there. From a screen standpoint, there's a gradual trend towards larger screens with higher resolutions. On the HTC One M7 that arrived a little over a year ago, we have a 4.7-inch 1080p display. This display looks nice, it delivers a very nice picture, but what we're starting to see is a shift towards bigger screens, and the HTC One M8 delivers that with a 5-inch 1080p display. That's 1920 by 1080. That's like your HD TV. Both of these screens are nice to look at. It looks like the iPhone 6 will offer a 4.7-inch screen, so the same size as this one, but it's going to have a different resolution. Current rumors suggest a 1704 by 960 resolution, which is an odd number, but it's actually a scaling up of the resolutions that we've seen on other iPhones, and that makes it easier for developers to bring their apps to the iPhone 6 with a larger display. This is the dummy unit, so the display doesn't turn on. We may see a sapphire coating on this model that will make it much harder to scratch, and it may add some other durability to it. The HTC One M8 and the HTC One M7 both use some form of strengthened glass to deliver a similar type of protection, but there are conflicting reports as to whether sapphire is going to be this major upgrade or if it's going to be a small step up from what we see on these devices. HTC is using the same 4 megapixel camera for this main camera on both of these devices. They call it an ultra pixel camera because the pixels are bigger, which in turn should deliver better low light and better overall performance. On the HTC One M8, we also have a second camera up top that allows you to take a picture and take that at multiple focus levels so that you can then blur the background or blur the foreground for a more dramatic effect. There are some other Android cameras that do this with software or by taking multiple pictures with the same camera. We also have this dual LED flash, which is something the iPhone 5S offers. On the iPhone 6, the camera rumors are still kind of up in the air. We're hearing we may have an 8 megapixel camera that has bigger pixels, similar to the strategy HTC is using, or we could have a 13 megapixel Sony sensor in there. And although we don't have a pill-shaped flash like we do on the iPhone 5S, and like we see here, it is possible that Apple's still going to deliver that and they found a way to smoosh those LEDs into a circular area right there. Now on the front of these devices we also see new camera options. The biggest improvement so far is on the HTC One M8, which has a 5 megapixel front-facing camera. We have a 2.1 megapixel front-facing camera on the M7, and we're not quite sure what Apple has in store on the iPhone 6, but we could see a small bump there. The trend right now is towards better front-facing cameras, so you can do video conferencing and take nicer looking selfies. As far as our basic features go, the storage options are most likely going to be on the iPhone 6 16, 32, and 64 gigabyte. There's always a chance that Apple will offer 128 gigabyte, but the new software has a lot of cloud storage options built in for photos and documents, so we could see Apple stick with those three solutions here. On both of the HTC models, we have built-in storage of 32 gigabytes, and on the HTC One M7 original, that's all you get. You're stuck with that until you upgrade your phone. On the HTC One M8, you can use a little tool to pop open a little area here, and you can drop in a micro SD card so that if you need to add 32 or 64, possibly even 128, I don't remember exactly what this phone supports, but you can add more storage by buying a cheap micro SD card and plugging it in so you can keep your photos and stuff like that on the device. Now, on the iPhone 6, you cannot add a micro SD card. It's just not something that Apple seems to be interested in. There are some cases for the iPhone 5 and iPhone 5S that add that support, but overall, it's not something that we think Apple's going to add to the iPhone 6 this year. If you want to have a more secure login, the iPhone 6 should have Touch ID, which allows you to push your finger, unlock the phone. You can use that for purchases, and in iOS 8 later this year, you're going to be able to use that for other purposes. Now, when it comes to the original HTC One, we don't have a fingerprint sensor at all, and we don't have one on the HTC One M8 either. Something that may or may not be important to you. From a battery standpoint, we saw HTC jump up the battery capacity from 2,300 mAh to 2,600 mAh, which basically means we have a bigger battery on the HTC One M8, and that's a trend we see as we get bigger screens and more powerful processors. On the iPhone 6, we could see about a 14 to 16% increase from the iPhone 5S, where we'll have maybe a 1,810 mAh battery in here, which is smaller than in these two devices, but depending on the processor and iOS 8, we may be able to get the same kind of battery life. Battery life is something that smartphone users complain about a lot. iPhone users tend to complain about it after small updates, and we see the same thing on different Android devices. So right now it's really tough to tell how that battery size will actually compare in terms of actual battery life across all of these devices. We'll have to wait until that is in hand. One final feature that really stands out, and a lot of people like, is the ability to use the HTC One M8 as a remote. So you can use the HTC One, HTC One M8. They both have a small spot on the top of the device that allows you to use that as a remote control. There are remote apps for the device built in, so you can control it, control your TV and home theater, things like that, using your phone without buying any accessories that you may need for the iPhone 6. We don't think the iPhone 6 will have remote control software built in. From a software standpoint, we're running Android on both of these devices, and the iPhone 6 should come with iOS 8 installed. It will probably have some iOS 8 exclusive features powered by different iPhone 6 specs that are included. On these two devices, we have Sense 6, which is HTC's version of Android, and both of these devices will get Android L, which is the newest version of Android coming later in 2014. They should get that within 90 days of the public release, according to HTC's promises in the past regarding Android updates, and that will add a new look to Android, although it's not clear exactly how much of that look HTC will keep. You should get a nicer look, similar to how the iPhone received a major facelift with iOS 7 last year. This is kind of what we're seeing here on the HTC devices and with Google's Android L that's coming to a variety of Android devices later this year. The iPhone 6 release date is probably scheduled for sometime in late September. Multiple rumors suggest September 19th. The HTC One that you see over here is about a year and a half old, and it's available as a refurbished or as sold new on some carriers, still at a very steep discount. The HTC One M8 has been out since about March on all major US carriers, and you can get that for anywhere from $50 on sale up to $199 on a 2-year contract. And so we expect the iPhone 6 price will stick around that $199, at least for this 4.7-inch model that we're showing here. The larger 5.5-inch model that's also rumored could come with a higher price tag, as we've seen with other premium and large Android devices. Thanks for watching. If you found this video useful, you can check out the links in the description to see other comparisons and to read more about these devices and how they stack up to the iPhone 6 on GottaBeMobile.com.